One of the first slave ships that brought black people to the New World was named Jesus.
So what? Rejecting Jesus because a slave ship was named after him is like refusing to trust doctors because a hospital was named Mercy while committing malpractice. The problem isn't the name, it's the people misusing it.
White Christians used Bible verses and Bible stories to justify slavery. There was a time when white Christians wouldn't baptize black people because they weren't sure if it was okay to enslave Christians.
And even our uneducated African ancestors knew that they were using these verses out of context. People use assault rifles to assassinate people, and some people use them to protect people. So is the problem the weapon or the person who's wielding it?
They quickly changed their theology, baptized their black slaves, and forthrightly sent them back to the fields to work.
What is your point? So far, all you've done is point the finger at the actions of evil white people who were Christians in name only. Arguments like these are emotional but make no logical sense to the rational mind.
4. Both black and white prosperity preachers have scammed millions of dollars from faithful black parishioners living in American slums.
1. Black churches and black preachers were the foundation of the abolitionist movement. 2. It was the black church and black preachers that was the birthplace of the modern civil rights movement. 3. It is the black church and black preachers that funded and founded the first schools for African Americans during and after slavery. Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, and a plethora of other HBCUs, all birthed from the black church. 4. It was the black church and black preachers who were the driving force behind political empowerment and voter mobilization. 5. It is the black church and its black preachers that has provided crucial social services from food banks to housing assistance, economic empowerment programs, health clinics, and so much more. It's easy to talk about the minority of black churches and black preachers that are scamming people and forget that the freedom and liberties that you have today and I have today were not fought for by atheists or deconstructionists. The pillar of resistance, education, and empowerment for black rights and for black freedom for black people has always been the black church. Now, what has atheism done for you lately?
5. It is an undeniable fact that Christianity has been a tool of oppression for black people all throughout the world. And yet today, Black Americans identify as Christians at a staggering 79%, higher than any other group in this country.
It is an undeniable fact that what you said is an insulting, uninformed, and uneducated opinion that was not and cannot be supported by any empirical evidence. What has oppressed Black people is believing the lies from people like yourself. And the sad part is that you don't seem to be aware of the empirical fact that Black people in Africa freely received the gospel before white Europeans did. That African nations like King Ezana's Aksumite Empire embraced Christianity and made it their national religion 1,200 years before colonization. Even West African places like Mali, Ghana, Zimbabwe, and the Congo had millions of Christians in it before the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, the Stono Rebellion was instigated by Black slaves from the Congo and was rooted in their Christian faith. What's oppressive is false, uneducated narratives from people like yourself who haven't done sufficient research. We identify as Christians because, like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, Phyllis Wheatley, Sojourner Truth, Richard Allen, and thousands of other slaves, we knew the God of the white slave owner was not the God of the Bible.
So the question is, why are Black people still Christians?
Because being a Christian isn't a contradiction to my Black identity. Because my Black is beautiful, and the presence of people of color who place their faith in God is seen all throughout the Bible. White slave owners knew this, which is why they took out 80% of the Bible before giving it to us. We are Christians because even though evil exists in the world, no other deity of any other religion on the planet, including African traditional religions, has ever claimed to have left their dwelling place to come and do something about the evil that's in this world. We're Christians because the evidence points to the fact that over 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus walked the earth, lived a perfect life, died by Roman crucifixion, and was laid in a borrowed tomb on Friday. He stayed in the tomb on Saturday, and on Sunday, that same tomb was empty. All of these are historical facts that can be proven by non-Christian sources from outside the Bible. We believe that the tomb was empty because he is who he said he was, and he did what he said he was going to do. Be resurrected, conquering death, hell, and the grave because he is God, and we want to spend eternity with him. Any more questions?
And while we're at it, I actually think there's a more pressing, more existential question that needs an answer. Does God hate Black people? In nearly every country on every continent around the world, darker-skinned people are treated poorly. By nearly every measurable standard, so-called Black people are at the bottom of the social hierarchy everywhere.
So is this God's fault or mankind's fault? Because there is enough food, water, shelter, and resources on the planet that no person of any race, color, or ethnicity should ever have their basic necessities not met. More people today are in slavery than ever existed during the transatlantic slave trade. But what are you doing about that? Nothing. Because these social inequities are the result of human greed and selfishness. The evil that you speak of isn't due to a lack of God in the world, but a lack of God in our lives.
So much so that in majority Black countries like Haiti and Nigeria, skin lightening creams are wildly popular. Anything to gain some proximity to whiteness and some distance from Blackness.
And assuming any of that's true, how is any of that God's fault?
Africa is rich with natural resources, boundless human potential, unfathomable wisdom, and brilliant cultural traditions. And yet, colonial powers have pillaged, exploited, and divided nations and people in ways that are frankly irreparable, all without consequence.
And so what are you doing about that? How is this misplaced attempt to blame God going to solve anything? Christianity commands us to love our neighbor. So how does one justify morality in an atheistic or a naturalistic worldview? You're asserting that these inequities are wrong, but by what objective moral standard are you basing this upon? Because atheism, naturalism, and evolution have no objective moral standard for right and wrong, for justice and injustice. You're stealing from God to attempt to accuse him of evil. Upon what objective moral justification should there be consequences for the evil that you mentioned? Because as soon as you attempt to contend that objective moral evil exists in the world and should be punished, you're presupposing objective moral good, which means you can't have without God. You can't call a line crooked without presupposing that an objective straight line exists.
I mean, I don't know. You'd think that God would help us out a little bit. We've been through a lot, God. Maybe there's a Bible verse that we can look to.
Oh, so I guess atheism ended slavery and fed Black families and assisted in their education, fought for their civil rights, and belief in self is what gave our ancestors the strength to endure slavery. No. When you actually read the words of our ancestors who were slaves, it was their faith in God that got them through. With a fraction of the education that we have access to today, they had more faith and common sense than most of us, and it is insulting to their legacy to demean the source of their hope and their faith.
And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above only and not be beneath. Who is this verse about?
What's funny, but even more insulting, is that you intentionally stopped there. If you had bothered to finish the rest of the verse, Deuteronomy 28:13 actually reads, quote, "If thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them," end quote. This verse isn't talking about Black people. It's about the nation of Israel, and it was written by Moses as a ratification of the covenant between God and the nation of Israel. It contained the blessings for obedience to God and the consequences of disobedience. You're attempting to read yourself into the pages of scripture that didn't have anything to do with you, and it sure wasn't talking to Black people.
Not only do Black people identify as Christians at a higher rate, half of Black Americans report attending church at least once a week. I was one of them. In fact, I was a pastor for a number of years. I've preached all over the country and world. I've given Bible studies. I've baptized folks. I have been in it, and these questions have been nagging me for a while.
You were a pastor, and the one verse you quoted in your video, you took it completely out of its context. With sincere love and respect, I'm grateful that you're not in anyone's pulpit anymore, and I pray that before you consider returning to one, that you submit yourself to proper discipleship and education. I suggest reading The Black Church by Henry Louis Gates, African American Religious History, The History of the Negro Church by Carter G. Woodson, A Multitude of All Peoples by Vince Bantu, and Black Church Empowered by Isaiah Robertson. And then last of all, How Africa Shaped the Christian Mind by Thomas Oden. When you do that, let's continue this conversation. God bless.